Hello and welcome to this year's first episode of Books and Cocktail. I think in total we're at number 11 now. So one of my goals this year is to make these episodes more often, which also includes reading more books. Today I'm talking about a book which I, to be honest, haven't fully understood, but it's definitely worth reading. Nassim Nicholas Taleb. The title is Antifragile, Things That Gain from Disorder. And as he's born in Lebanon, I also try to do some Lebanese-inspired cocktail. So, enjoy! Yeah, pretty good. So, you might notice I made notes, so I hope it won't be as confused as normally. So I started reading this book about 1 year ago, actually a bit more than a year ago. It's nothing you can read just in one go and be done with it. This thing is full of ideas. The New York Times called it maddening, bold, repetitious, judgmental, intemperate, erudite, reductive, shrewd, self-indulgent, self-congratulatory, provocative, pompous, perspicacious, and pretentious, which is a ton of adjectives, and most of them are actually correct. But the rest of the review seems a bit more like didn't really read the book, and same problem as me, didn't fully understand it. So I think I'm in a good company there. If even the New York Times doesn't understand it fully and does a review, I'm also qualified. In general, Monsieur Taleb seems to irritate a lot of journalists. All the reviews you find online are kind of yeah, you feel some kind of they don't like him and he doesn't like them. What's about it? So the main thing, what is anti-fragility? Taleb classifies things in 3 categories. There is fragile, which is if there's some external stressor, it breaks. There's robust or stable, which means if there's an external stressor, it remains indifferent. And there is antifragile. When there is an external stressor, it becomes more stronger. And a couple of examples. So most of social constructs or technologies are fragile or stable. So for example, if you have a car or something, if you're lucky, it's stable. You go on a rough road and it doesn't break, but it doesn't get stronger. A donkey or a horse or something like that is antifragile. If you take your donkey or your horse on a rough road, it grows muscles, it gets stronger. So nature is most often antifragile, and everything constructed is stable or, in the worst case, fragile. And coming from these 3 categories, he's looking at a couple of concepts and how to make things anti-fragile. So fragility can become a big problem, or even stability can become a big problem, because stability sometimes is just hidden fragility. An example, for example, if you take the financial market, which looked pretty stable, and then there was some random event and that thing collapsed in 2008 or whenever that was. And Taleb, he is a former trader, so he experienced that firsthand. He also betted on that collapse, so he lived his theory, and he had an anti-fragile strategic to invest. So, which leads us already to the first important thing, skin in the game. So it addresses the agency problem. If you make decisions, you should be responsible for them. You should feel the consequences of them. So it's the every captain goes down with his ship thing. It's if people are not affected by their decisions, or even worse, people get the benefits but not the downsides of their decisions, then you tend to make morally dubious decisions. As an example, back to the financial markets. So all the bank managers get their bonuses when they perform well. And when they do crap, it's the taxpayer who has to bail out the bank. So there's some kind of asymmetry. So there, the agents, the bank managers, concentrate on their bonuses, but they do not look at the risks. So they take risks beyond what is sensible, because they don't have to fear the risks. It's the taxpayer who pays it. So most important thing is skin in the game. If you have a theory, you should live according to it and you should suffer the consequences. Second thing is a concept coming from theology. It's called via negativa. And in theology, it means you do not explain what God is, but you explain God by what God not is. So you're excluding things. And Taleb extends that concept to wide area and to a more active thing, like actually remove things which could create harm, even if you're unsure. So as an example, you have stomach problems, and instead of adding something, like a medicine, you leave out things, for example, milk or wheat or whatever, and see if it goes away, if your stomach problems goes away. So instead of additive way of dealing with things, you do a subtractive way of dealing with things. And the same thing goes for all kind of technological decisions or anything else. So if you're not sure if something creates harm, leave it out. If you're sure it doesn't create harm, then you can look at the benefits, but focus on the risk and focus on leaving things away instead of adding things. Adding things is closely related to something called iatrogenics, or I don't know how to pronounce it in English, which is actually the effect when something which is meant as a cure creates harm. So when your medical treatment has side effects, and most often these side effects get stronger than the actually intended effects. So he has various examples, most of them medicine. He also doesn't really like medicine. For example, high blood pressure. So a little bit high blood pressure is probably perfectly normal, but nonetheless, people get prescribed a lot of medicine against this little high blood pressure. And if you look at it in total, probably the danger from the side effects of that medication is much bigger than the danger from that little bit high blood pressure. So instead of curing people, you're actually killing more people with the cure. Okay, then the next concept he shows is something called the Lindy effect, which is actually pretty simple. Things which have been around for a long time will probably stay around for a long time. So if something worked for the last 100 years, like books, it will probably be around in another 100 years as well. So in 100 years, we will probably have books again, or still. If it worked for 1 year only, you can only assume that it will work another year. You cannot tell it will work 100 years. So things which have a tradition probably will remain. Things which are new probably might go away. Some might remain. So the longer something is around, the longer it will stay around. And he actually warns against neomania, which is just getting things because they're new. Most often they are new, but then they also disappear as soon as they popped up. And the last thing he has is so-called barbell strategy, which is where you notice his history as a trader. And it's, for me, it's nothing really out of this world. So it's spreading your risk. When you do something, for example, like financial investment, put 90% into a rock solid investment and 10% into an ultra high risk thing where you can gain a lot, but your losses are your 10% you put there. It's kind of a common sense strategy. Instead of putting everything in a middle risk category, put things in a no risk and a high risk strategy. He also puts that, for example, if you want to become a writer, you should get a sinecure day job where you just don't care about the job, so it doesn't get all your energy, but you have a job which keeps you alive, and you don't put your whole income on the book, which might fail. So the book itself, it's full of stories and quotes, and he is a big fan of ancient writers. He's a great adept of Seneca and the Stoics. He quotes a lot of those, of Seneca and the disciples of Seneca. And he makes a lot of good suggestion based on the Stoic philosophy. So most of his ideas are nothing really new. They are based on 2,000-year-old wisdom, or sometimes even 4,000-year-old wisdom when he quotes the Codex Hammurabi. But he's bringing a modern twist on it, and he is challenging a lot of ideas which are taken as given in economy and science and in society at all. It's not a self-help book. It's not a book giving you a solution to things, and he's actually saying he doesn't know himself. He's providing some heuristics and some ideas how to cope, some strategies how to cope with uncertainty and randomness. But it's not a 5 steps to get rich book. It's definitely worth reading. Take your time to read it. You probably need to read it 2 or 3 or 4 times. At least I do. And it will be irritating at times, probably, but I prefer to have an irritating book than a boring book. So definitely recommendation, Nassim Taleb, Antifragility, and go out and read it. And I think he's doing another book right now, which I think I'll also get. So thanks for watching. If you liked it, thumbs up. If you don't like it, thumbs down, the usual stuff. Subscribe, go on whatever, and do whatever you do on YouTube and Facebook and things, and have fun and go out and read a book.